Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Samson. Good morning to you and the other panelists in the studio.
Great. We want you to help us with a different perspective to this Galamsey fight. After hearing the minister cry at the press conference, we don't know whether he's overwhelmed by what he's seeing, but when he was in opposition, he joined us to do the Galamsey fight campaigns. We were saying there should be a repeal of the LI. He was all with us. Suddenly, he doesn't think it should be repealed. Is that why he's crying? So now tell us, Akunta Mining, 3 people had petitioned, Ken Ashigbe, Kwame Sapong-Asiedu, Martin Pebu, they had petitioned with evidence coming from the government itself that he should be prosecuted. He was never prosecuted. Now, there's been a raid at his place and his accounts have been frozen and so on and so forth. Show us what you think is a new path that gives us some great direction to fighting the Galamsey.
Thank you, Samson. It's a big issue when it comes to Galamsey, and those of us on the Super Morning Show, we've been looking at historical Google satellite images. We've been looking at Ghana's mining data when it comes to some of the maps by the Minerals Commission. And we've been trying to think about how to approach this differently. For example, holding the government accountable. How do we prove and show that the Galamsey fight is not making any gains using satellite imagery or GIS? What really are the issues when it comes to gold, our environment, wealth creation and production? Now, this map you see on the screen as I'm projecting is the Ghana Gold Deposits map, right? And this is by the Minerals Commission. It's on their website. It's public information. If you go to the Minerals Commission website, you look for Ghana Gold Deposits of Ghana, you should see this. And it comes with a lot of text to explain the historical background of gold mining, where mining sites are, the various nuances and all that. And if you can see the mouse on the screen, if you look at the southwestern part of Ghana, that's where a lot of our gold deposits are. So the alluvial prospects, they are there. The gold prospects, a lot of them are there. And your current gold production activities are also happening in the southwestern part of the country. So from the Achim area to Obuasi, to Takwa, to Pristia, to all these areas, those are where you see the mining happening. Now, we also asked ourselves, when we say people are mining in forest reserves and forestry resources, why is this so? Now, if you look at this interactive forest map of Ghana, you will see that all the major primary forests and forest reserves are also in the southwestern part of the country. The main forest reserve, which is not really in the southwestern part of the country, but it's to the west of the Volta Lake, is the Dija National Park, which is somewhere in the Afram Plains area. And then you see the Mole National Park also up here. So it is evident that a lot of our gold deposits are found in our river bodies, our streams, and in our forest areas. And so that is the challenge. For any gold to be mined, some kind of vegetation must be affected. So from all the big mining companies to the small mining companies, that is happening. Now, I'm giving you this background so that if I'm showing you images of our water bodies and our forests being mined in, you know that people are mining there because practically, if you look at the Birimian Basin, the Botean Basin, and the Takwayan basins, the major basins in Ghana with productive gold deposits, they are all within the southwestern parts, and they are also all largely covered by forests. Unfortunately, we've lost millions of hectares of our forest resources over the past years, and we are still going to lose. Now, you mentioned Akonta mining, and Akonta is somewhere in Samraboy. So I'm zooming in to Samraboy to give listeners a sense of what has happened in that area over the past 2-3 years. And a reason why Erastus Sasaredonko doesn't sleep and is always in the forest monitoring activities of mining. Now, if you can see this map, I've zoomed in and there's a dark green area. This dark green area is part of the Tano Forest Reserve, so the Tano Nimri Forest Reserve, all the various sections of the Tano Forest. And you see a line from Samra Boy coming all the way down, meandering through the forest and the hills, coming all the way down. That line you see is the Tano River. Ideally, if you zoom into the river, it should show a color which is blue or green, depending on the dissolved substances in it. If a river is passing through a forest, you have all sorts of leaves and other things, rotten organic material, so it changes the color. But now I zoom into this Tano River and you see brown.
Yeah.
And current satellite images of the Tano River around the Tano Forest Reserve. So you see the trees and you see the river and you see brown. And by the river, you see excavations. All these excavations are excavations people have dug and they are using them to mine. And you can see in certain portions some aggregates in the Tano River. Now, this goes on all over reserves too. This is happening almost everywhere. Now, I'm going to zoom into this particular area and take you back a year or two to show you how bad the fight against Galamsey has been.
And you want our viewers to understand that what you are doing is as of now, this very moment.
Yes. So as of this very moment, this is how the area looks like, right? This is a portion of the Tano Reserve that I've zoomed in.
Right.
Now you see the Tano River meandering through the forest, and you see Galamsey sites or mining sites all over the place.
Right.
If I take you 10 years back to show you an image of the place, you would see the river flowing through the forest nicely with certain spots of mining happening within the area. In fact, this tool allows us to measure some of the sizes of the areas that have been affected. So this area I've measured, for example, is 58 acres, right? Now, I can measure other areas within this particular space. And Samson, forgive me, I'm on the farm and it's just started raining. So my audio may not be excellent.
Okay.
It just started raining, so I'm under a shed and I'm doing this presentation.
For now, it's good. Now so let's manage it.
Yes, this rectangle I've measured is also about 91 acres, right? Now, this is as at 2015. Now, if I take you fast forward to 2016, you would realize that it is changing, and the area is expanding. The area being mined is expanding. Now, we come fast forward to 2024, and to the left of the screen, we realize that the mining has moved from just the Tano area into the forest. So all these areas are being mined. And that's where the problem is. Sometimes when you raise the concern that we are not doing enough when it comes to illegal mining, duty bearers will give you all sorts of excuses to tell you they are doing A, B, C, D. In fact, there was a point we spent millions of the taxpayers' money to buy drones. And these drones couldn't aid us in fighting the illegal mining menace. But there are free and easy tools like Google Earth, which can enable the states, the law enforcement agencies, to see historical images of the country, to see how certain landscapes were and how those landscapes are. And if you're engaging the right people to sit behind computers to do this analysis, they should be able to inform the authorities per second or daily how our landscape is changing and where the illegal miners are moving to enable us to fight this menace. Something I can show you different places. Mention any place you want, and let me go there and show you how the landscape has changed over the years.
Take me anywhere to the Elembele area, the minister's place.
Oh, Elembele area.
Yes.
Be down here somewhere.
I'm to understand, perhaps something may have been informing why he's crying. He's home.
So I will just type Elembele in the search box.
Okay.
It will take us to Elembele, right? So this is the Elembele area.
Okay.
If you zoom into Elembele, you'll see that this area has a lot of agric happening.
Okay.
Elembele basically would have a lot of agric happening and a lot of those things going on. But if we come to the right,
I'm seeing something there.
If we start moving from Elembele to the right, to the Wasser Kopon area, into the Takwa areas, you see a change in the landscape properly. So if I take you right to the Wasser Kopon areas, take you to Winston's hometown, for example, Mpoho. I showed Winston how Mpoho has changed over the past 5 years, and he was shocked how his own hometown, with a lot of plantations, has now become a Galamsey hub. So this is Mpoho, as you see on the screen.
Right.
You can see some mining pits and other things happening around here. If I zoom in, for example, you see that all these forests are being mined.
Yeah.
And all this is Galamsey. It's raining, so my internet is behaving a little funny. It's not giving us sharper images.
Okay.
But all these brown you see are people making incursions into the forest.
Okay.
And if I take you to 2017, for example, you will see that this forest, which is being mined now, was a farm. There were plantations where people were farming and creating value. So it's a big problem when it comes to Galamsey and how we are fighting it. And I would advise that the current Minister of Lands and Forestry, look, Google Earth is free. It's a free resource that you can use with his team. And luckily, we have institutions like Geological Survey Department, Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority, with people who are very good with GIS technology. They can help. The other thing is that we can subscribe to platforms like Planet, which will give you daily insights with satellite imagery. And it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to do that. And if you select a specific geographical area, they can give you prompts to show you what is happening and the changes to the landscape to enable us fight this.
Thank you.
Now, beyond all these things, the question is, if the gold deposits are in our forest areas and are in our river bodies, and we need the wealth, how do we approach it? Should we say that we won't touch our forest, we won't touch our river bodies and extract the wealth, or we should find a strategic, sustainable way of actually even reforesting a lot more parts of Ghana and choose specific areas within some of these areas with good ore and have gold mining enclaves with regulation, with land reclamation strategies, so that we can extract some of the wealth to drive national development and also prevent the unstructured nature of small-scale mining and the destruction to our biodiversity and the natural environment. Something.
Thank you, Kojo. Let's end this here. Thank you very much. What you are doing is quite intriguing, and Kojo is talking about regulation and the rest of it. And I'm just asking myself, is it the regulation we really don't have? All of it. We have them in excess. Our problem is how to implement them. Right. So, gentlemen, let's start with Inus of Seni, because you have been here and you fought it and became a casualty, except you survived it. What do you think? What do you think prompted the minister to be shedding tears at the press conference?
This issue seems to be very important.
Yeah, it's John 11:35.
We're in Easter. Jesus wept, so he also had to weep.
He had to weep. I mean, he had to weep. It was Easter. But I think that he was overwhelmed by the enormity of the destruction. Now, if you appreciate what is happening to our natural resources, I mean, you understand why there is a movement, a global movement, towards making environmental crimes against humanity. The lush fauna and greenery of the forest is going. You understand, if you understand why Atiwa was declared a globally significant biodiversity area, you understand why its destruction is a concern to all of us. If you understand why the people in the Amazon forest are prepared to risk their lives and fight off investors, you understand what the forest does to us. I mean, if the environment is destroyed, we are also gone. I mean, I've read Gerard Diamond's book, The World Until Yesterday. And you appreciate that the desert, where we now call the desert, was so many years ago a forested area. It became a desert because of human activity. And now they have to live in that harsh environment without water. So what we are doing to our environment can also lead to what has happened in the desert. But in mining, just as in the utilization of natural resources, there's an inherent rule or principle that ought to be obeyed and respected by the present generation, as it was obeyed and respected by the past generation. Intergenerational equity. That when you mine our environment, you must mine it in such a way as not to compromise the ability of future generations to continue to live on the environment. Because if we do that, if we mine it with reckless disregard to how future generations will live on that environment, we are committing a crime against them. And that's why all of us need to understand that if you look at the level of destruction that is visiting this country because of our recklessness, then you are asking, what are we doing? Where are we leading the future generations to? They might not even be able to provide for their own sustenance. Now, almost all the water bodies, and your reporter was showing the water bodies, and he said they were brown. They are dying. They can't sustain life, aquatic life, because of the hazardous substances introduced into the water bodies. Do you know the number of patients that suffer from kidney diseases who report to the Kulibu Hospital, which hospital and the cardiothoracic center, what is the name of that center, has been facing financial difficulties because we have not been able to provide dialysis for them. If the number increases, can you imagine what that will mean? Just about 100,000, and we are suffering. Now there's an increase in the number of people suffering from kidney diseases, directly linked to our activities of Galamseyers. Women have to bring forth children deformed.
So as for the problems, we know the problems. We have known the problems for a while now. And in opposition, you gave us very firm promise, including repealing the law that allows for mining in forest reserves, which was passed in 2022 and led to, certain people going in there.
Yeah.
Is there solutions?
So the law is going to be repealed.
Is it?
Yes, it will be repealed. I mean, I think that it's a matter of moral integrity on the part of the president. He has said, I will repeal the law.
So now you have changed from amendment to...
The law is going to be repealed.
Okay.
And Sami Jamfi said that 2 days ago. It's going to be repealed. LI 2462 will be repealed.
Beyond repealing that, you joined us in the crusade for a state of emergency on our water bodies and also in our forest reserve. Actually, the Pope that is being buried today, Pope Francis,
yes,
he was very heavy on the matter of ecocide.
Yes.
We had the Metropolitan Archbishop, Bonaventure Kofi, actually also rallying Catholics, and we went on a demonstration about these things, calling for the state of emergency to be declared.
I joined you even in studio, and that's why I was from the studio when I heard that my brother and the Democratic people had been arrested. Right. I moved straight to there with a second thought. And that led to the establishment of the Protest Legal, a group that offers free services to those who engage in civil action. Because we need to protect the environment. And I joined you in saying that we should call for a state of emergency, because that will allow us not only to deal with those who are presently on the land, but also those who have even acquired permits legally. Because when you declare a state of emergency, you freeze all rights. So the accrued rights will be frozen. And then you can go into the forest to deal with the people who are there.
So when will the state of emergency happen?
That is why we are bringing the president's attention to the fact that, look, what we promise the people, we should go by it. In fact, if there's anything that will affect us as a government more in this time of John Dramani Mahama, will be our ability or inability to fight illegal small-scale mining.
He should declare the state of emergency on our water bodies and
on the forest areas.
Forest reserves.
Okay. Should be no-go area.
Okay. Then the demonstration may not become necessary anymore. Why doesn't he do it just today? Yes, Oliver.
First of all, since you've ended on the demonstration, let me say that the question of citizens' involvement in the conversation is extremely important.
Yes.
And irrespective of how so many people feel that the government is taking some actions and for which reason citizens should not mobilize to put more pressure, I completely disagree. I believe that more and more people should be coming into the streets. I think that people in Galamsey areas should also be calling the government's attention that the state of emergency and the temperature for it would even rise by how much civic demands are in the space for it. So far, I mean, even when the former president was on, I had taken a more nuanced position on the state of emergency issue because I am still quite apprehensive about there's a need to define the framework of it. I have heard so many people, and I've written about this, that I am continuously afraid when people say that a shoot and kill approach is the only
No.
So if that is the understanding people will have of a state of emergency approach, I have been a bit apprehensive about it because of human life. But it doesn't mean that the parameters cannot be defined. It doesn't mean that we will not be able to understand significantly why it is necessary, what the government intends to do, and the due process questions that will be involved in that. But also importantly, the only defense we have, or anything that the government has said on this issue is the purported statement which was attributed to Mustafa Bande, where he was saying that investors will be queasy. When I wrote about this, he called me and said, in fact, his words had been misreported on the issue. Whether that is true or not, the question is, what is the government saying about it, and why does it think it would not help? That question has not come up, so we can engage it sufficiently on that question. The problem I am having, why I'm even more scared now, that, you know, our law firm has joined a number of organizations, Arocha Ghana, Wakam, the Nature and Development Fund, to be doing trainings in those areas to gather more people who would be community agents. I just returned from one yesterday. We were away for the past 2 weeks. The level of despondency in those communities is huge. The belief that we can't do anything
about it, yes.
Because the state is not invested in this, our chiefs are behind this. If you speak up against it, you are isolated. People have lost the will to fight. That is scary. So we have gotten to a point where we continue to ask ourselves, if this is terrorism, is this the way in which the government proposes to fight terrorism? Because these are not my language, this is the minister's language. So if you are saying that we are dealing with a Boko Haram level of attack on our country, then we are not seeing the same level of response. This is where people's fears and apprehensions remain. So for some reason, this is what I have been saying, that we have been used to dysfunctional politics for a long time in this country. But it seems to us that our politics does not know where to draw the line and say that on this issue, we are facing an existential threat. And we must rally and do everything that it entails. So I don't mind whether it is political parties on the streets, I don't mind it is nursing mothers, whether it's a prayer walk. We must all descend on government and we must all keep the temperature and the pressure high. For this should be the one thing where we say that we Ghanaians will not allow this to happen to us.
Prof, the Archbishop I just referred to, I think this week, and the Catholic bishops have been very consistent on this matter. They have repeated the call now that John Mahama should act to his words. Is it not easy for him now because those who were in government previously, who were against the state of emergency, suddenly they think the state of emergency is important, including the Lands and Natural Resources Minister, who was very clear that a state of emergency was not what to be done. Now he believes it's what we should do. So it's easy for the government to do. Why are they waiting? What are they waiting for?
Well, you know, first of all, I have to associate myself with Oliver in terms of upgrading the severity of this matter to a very high level. And it is a threat. and we don't need to repeat it. In fact, we've spoken too much about this. Action is what we need. Given all the issues that have been raised, I agree this is the opportune time for this president to make his mark on this matter. And I will suggest, first of all, a national dialogue on anti-Galamsey. And the reason I'm saying this...
Another one.
Have we had one?
Yeah, we had one. We had one or two so far,
And
but not under this government.
Under this government.
Oh, yeah. I'm talking about action-oriented dialogue. Not that one. No, that was a camouflage. You see, with the objective of radically developing a policy that will address this, I think all political parties, to avoid this notion of partisan approach to this, now let's have all the political parties together, civil society, and everybody, the chiefs, and sign a national pact. A national pact indicating that this is a matter of the highest national interest. Now you come to the issue of emergency. In fact, I spoke to some military generals, friends of mine. Emergency has serious implications, and I think that's what Oliver was saying.
You're dealing with a serious problem.
Yes. No, there's an easy and faster way is to declare security zones. When you talk to the soldiers, they'll tell you, security zone doesn't take you through the long process of declaring emergency. All you do is to declare those zones, especially where the matter is very severe. Let the soldiers go there, more or less like you condone it, and nobody enters. That requires only a decision by the national security, not Parliament, because state of emergency requires parliamentary approval.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if we did that immediately, I hear they form something like blue wall.
But state of emergency is not difficult for this government. If they do the initial declaration and go to Parliament for a confirmation, of it, they will get it. They have the numbers.
But something, the effect to be the same.
No, for any attempt to give an excuse that it's a difficult process.
It's not difficult.
For a government
can
that has the absolute numbers in Parliament.
Oh, yeah, I agree. But you see, when you declare state of emergency, the terms of reference for the soldiers will be different. And that's where perhaps he was expressing concerns about certain human rights abuses that may occur. But if you declare a security zone, anyway, we can let the security people sort that out. But more importantly, I think we are talking about the need to quickly have a policy on the mining sector, and not what we have in terms of having this gold board, but a policy that will establish how we approach mining overall in the country, in addition to stemming the problems of Galamsey. Because, in fact, there's one initiative that I like about this government, and I've heard it said many times, at least by the Deputy CEO of the Mineral Commission, where I think efforts are being made. I think the president also mentioned that recently, that it's time for us to begin to have the mineral sector under the control of Ghana, so we can derive all the benefits to the country. I'm in support of that. But I think we need to blend that in the new policy and then define new approaches to mining. In fact, with the small-scale mining, again, I'm not sure about the policy, because having the gold board to encourage the procurement of gold from these small-scale miners, I don't know whether that encourages a small-scale mining Galamsey way, or that they are now going to clean it up and license properly.
That's the purpose.
Is that the purpose? That's the purpose. And then the action towards that should be immediate.
That's the purpose. That's the purpose on the books by the new law.
Well, yeah, that's the purpose. That's the purpose because
yes.
Because you see, when you look at the
why should I believe this purpose? Why should I believe this purpose? There are laws that says that no excavator gets into this place without being traced, because they are all going to be monitored, and yet they get in there.
That's the purpose, because, and let me track back and answer to you. There's a policy, there's a mining policy consistent with the African mining vision, which says that look, and that policy came into being, the African mining vision came into being in 2019. 1999.
And it did what to us?
So it's part of the policy. The implementation and monitoring of the policy is a problem. You know, until 1989, small-scale mining was a banned activity in this country. Because we simply thought that we could not manage the consequences. But we were confronted with unemployment.
So we allow it to go.
We said, no, let's legalize it and limit it to only Ghanaians. And provide a framework where people can apply for licenses so that the Minerals Commission can monitor their activities. The overriding concern was how do you protect the environment? Now, that was why the PMMC was established. Because when you look at the existing gold mines, they don't sell their gold won here. They don't even process the gold here. So if you legalize small-scale mining, you must create a platform, an institution that will buy the gold won.
I have no problem with that, my good friend. I think we're talking about how we stop Galamsey as it affects them.
So I was just giving the historical account.
Okay.
So when we started implementing it, then this notion of monopoly, granting monopoly to PMMC came up. I said, look, so World Bank and others liberalized the... But we had no structure to monitor where people were winning the gold from. We didn't have a Kimberley process, as is seen in the diamond thing. So people then, financiers then came up and gave money to people to win gold, and nobody was tracking how the gold was won.
Yeah, okay.
Now that we know,
we know all this, that's why the gold board says that, look, no one will be licensed to buy gold in Ghana.
Right.
Look, if you win gold, you must sell it. And now becomes a crime for anybody apart from the gold board to export gold.
Let me ask Oliver, are you as excited as those other campaigners who are happy that the likes of Akunta Mining are getting into trouble now
but they have always been
in the fights?
I am more disturbed, and I think I talked about this, by the fact that the Minerals Commission issued a statement claiming that they have been operating without parliamentary ratification of any mining lease and without any environmental permit for the past 3 years. This is not the first time we have raised this issue. And to think that we would have to wait for government to change for an institution that's supposed to be a technical institution, a constitutional body, to come out and say this is disheartening. And so we can't just say these things without any consequences to anybody. Now, of course, you have caught yourself then in a situation whereby it feels that everything will get a political thing or a partisan thing to it. Because those institutions that ought to act regardless of who is in power are failing to do so. So that is where the concern is. But I think it's absolutely important that even in the face of those complaints, that Akunta Mining and other companies that are involved in this process be held accountable for what has happened over the period. It also means prosecutions at the highest level. I have in fact talked about there's a lot of conversation and suspicion that a lot of the gold that was being mined was used to fund campaigns. We must get into those conversations. Just because they are difficult doesn't mean we should not look into them.
The CDD and ASILA political party funding project discovered that
a lot of the money was going into those areas. So we can't leave that to remain. But the bigger question, part of the big questions that we need to be answering going forward, in terms of some of the discretions that exist within the legal framework, that you would say that a technical body will do this, then the minister can override. There's too much discretion that exists within the legal framework that allows a lot of things to then gain the veneer of legality. Because, well, the minister is competent to do X, Y, Z. We must be able to look into those and establish how we change those going forward. So yes, there's a policy that exists in place. For some reason, policy is not matching, or what is on the ground is not matching those commitments. Then how do we short-circuit the process again to be able to change this? I have now, for instance, come to have a different vision on the question of burning of excavators. Because the law says yes, you shouldn't burn them. And I was aggrieved about the process of burning them. But then it's explained to me that because the control centers are being removed, you can't do anything about. Then, of course, if reality is not matching law, the reform law to be able to deal with the problem, if that is where the problem is. We cannot say that, well, this is so attractive. The excavators are so attractive that let's not burn them. We burn weed or marijuana when we seize them. But they also have a high market value. There are certain things that despite the market value, the destructive potential is so much that we must take a different approach to them. That's where my view is. Erastus, for instance, even on this question that we are going to be challenging the minister on, the deportation of foreign nationals, says yes, even as we're having that conversation, we must recognize that when you look at the data, the vast majority of foreign nationals who are, particularly Chinese, who are arrested, are released on the same day because they pay higher. It has added up to the corruption network that exists there. So even as we are talking about the deportation, it means that, you know, it's a Medusa-like problem. There's so many heads to this that the level of urgency that is pushing people to call for a state of emergency is precisely the concern. That the problem is too multifaceted.
Right. Interesting there.
Is it possible we can overcome this problem?
It's possible. It's possible.
Then let's have a straightforward action plan.
Yeah, it's
to
possible.
Proceed.
First of all, you need the political will to do that.
And you have that will. Don't
Yeah, I've always
have
said
the will.
I've always said that. Well, even the starting point is the district chief executive. There's no reason why you pretend over a political district and you can't bring Galamsey under control. If you can't, then your key, it should be part of your KPI.
But
Even the chiefs.
But the minister talks about something you may say is not new. He said that he issued a warning to large-scale mining concession holders who are hiding behind the legal leases to fund the destruction of our forests and river bodies. He says, we know some of your schemes were coming after you.
Yeah.
Large-scale mining concessions are now rather involved in Galamsey.
Yes, because gold prices have hit the roof. So artisanal mining is now, or surface mining is now profitable. Initially, large-scale miners did not mine. I mean, on the surface, surface mining was not part of their distance. But gold hit 1,800. So no matter the expense involved in gathering sand and washing and doing things, you will still make profit. And that's how some of them decided to parcel the surface lands to Galamseyers to mine. We know all this. But the license says if you can't do it and you are doing it, it's a breach of the terms and conditions of the license.
Okay.
And that's a ground for revocation.
Thank you very much. Thank
Why
you.
have we not taken action? I think the problem has been the
Action,
action.
the action.
And I'm excited reading, you know, people like is it Salam Mustafa, the national youth organizer of the NPP, joined the campaign, and he says they should declare a state of emergency. These were the things they campaigned.
He said he was ready to come and beat us.
and used against the new patriotic party.
When you wanted it, they said, we can't beat you.
They mobilized people to the Flagstaff House to come and confront and beat us up.
The politicians, eh? Anyway, God is watching us, and I hope that He's watching the politicians too. Just yesterday, a state of emergency was said, no. Suddenly, all of them say state of emergency. That's what you promised.
And the assumption.
J. Spar says the government in just 4 months has shown commitment. They must be commended. More to be done too. Yeah, we hear that, but we want the real things done.
More, yeah.
Excellence reign again, says John Mohammed's government has taken the fight against Galamsey so seriously. At the end, Ghana will be free against illegal mining into the river bodies and destruction of lands. It's a good fight so far. You've forgotten how Nanado started. We put his presidency on the line. Isaac Opari says, we need to have state of emergency as proposed by organized labor. There were arrests previously, and there are arrests also presently by security agencies. So arresting is nothing new. Kwame Atta says the government is doing well, but it doesn't end there. The government must do everything possible to put an end to this Galamsey. And that is absolutely right. Thank you very much. My outfit, as always, is by Konati Clothing. You can call them 0244 676732, 676732. Konati Clothing, and they'll make you look good. The show is also brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, you love to be there. The place is so serene, and you know the ethics that they inculcate in their students, very brilliant. They have an ethical code. They are taking exams. Nobody is watching, but nobody is, cheating. Of course, there are CCTV cameras. Educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance. Dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Flamingo Paint, simply superior. Syntex Tanks is strong and it's tough. Activa International Insurance, our clients, our passion. International Facilities Management Association is also associated with Newsfile. My guests have been Asunaba, Dinah Asunaba, the former Deputy Attorney General and Minister of Justice. Inus Hussaini is former MP Tamale Central and former Minister of different portfolios. Professor Bafo Ajimandria, former UN Governance Advisor. Always helps to bring some good measure, you know, as it were, moderating influence on the matters. Oliver Barker-Vormawor, the conscientious protester, constitutional rights and policy strategy advisor for Democracy Hub. Kojo Akoto-Boateng is multimedia journalist right here. Thank you also very much for being part of the show. Tomorrow, join the ECOWAS, President of the ECOWAS Court, Edward Amwakwa-Sante, on the law. We're giving you education about the ECOWAS Court, how you can access it. As a citizen of Ghana, if your government does wrong and you don't think you can get some justice, go there, they will help you. Have a good afternoon.